So apologies for being a few days late on this video. I've been down in Devon for the last few days on a photography project, and in today's video I want to talk about how we can as photographers get to a point where we become really happy with the images that we take. And this is something that I think a lot of beginner photographers struggle with, and even those who have been doing photography for a few years can still get to a place where they're going out, taking photos, coming back, editing them, and just still not quite being happy with the end result. So in this video, I'm going to give some tips on how we can kind of flatten that curve and get to the point where we're going out, shooting photos, and getting photos that we ourselves are really proud of and happy to share with others. So it doesn't really matter what type of photography you do, whether you do landscapes, whether you do interiors, portrait, street photography, or you like to do a little bit of everything, because I feel like these tips are going to be pretty universal. And if that sounds like you, if you are the type of photographer that has kind of like a multidisciplinary approach where you photograph a lot of different subjects, then this could be even more applicable, because I'm a full-time professional photographer and I kind of fall into that category. So the entirety of my income as a full-time photographer comes from providing photography as a service. My photography is primarily used for commercial work, so I work with anything from coffee shops to interior design firms to architecture companies. Whatever it is, there is always a need for photography, and I'm trying to kind of wear a lot of different hats when it comes to my photographic work, but I like to think that there's at least a common thread through all of my photos. So whether I'm shooting landscapes for my own passion or whether I'm shooting an interior for a client, I like to think that even if you were to see those two images side by side, you'd probably still have a sense of who that artist was and who that creator, who that photographer was. And I think that's what we should all be hoping to strive for, is that kind of recognition of our work, even when the name is taken off of the image. Now, I've been a full-time photographer for the last 2.5 years, and I've been doing photography for the last 7 years. And it's taken me a long time to get to a point where I feel like I have my own specific style that interests me and therefore will potentially interest a client, because it's just something that feels very natural to me. It's how I like to perceive images, and regardless of what that style is, it should resonate with you. But how is it that we can get to that point where we're finding that creative style, that visual aesthetic that really makes us happy when we look at our images? Now, it may sound obvious, but for me, the beginning of that journey started by just trying to replicate the work of other photographers that inspired me. I think the best way that we can learn how to edit photos and how to achieve a certain look is just by actually going out, taking photos and coming back and trying to edit those photos in the style of another photographer. Now, there's a lot of ways that you can do this, but I have a process, or at least I had a process when I was starting this journey of finding my style, of basically going out with the intention of shooting something based off of something that I'd already seen. Now, it's really important to understand that we're doing this as an exercise. We're not stealing another photographer's work, we're just merely using their work as a learning exercise. I think when you're just starting out, the opportunity to learn is the most important thing, and thanks to social media, we are inundated with photos on a daily basis. So a way that I do this is I have a ton of different folders set up on Instagram, and if I see a post that I like, then I'll save it into one of my categories, and then when I'm looking to do a project, and if the client has a certain style that they're looking to achieve, or even for me personally, if I just have a particular editing style that I want to work on, I'll go to the folder, I'll find the image, and I'll just do a little side-by-side edit to try and understand what that photographer is doing. As I mentioned, it's not about stealing their look. It's about understanding how they've achieved that look, so you have a better understanding of how you can manipulate photos in a way that is pleasing to you. Once you have knowledge, you have the power to be able to go in any direction that you want. Now, for me, I'm a musician. And you might think that there's no point in me telling you that I'm a musician, but there is a quote that I came across when I was playing guitar that sort of applies to this, and if any of you guys are musicians, you might have already heard of this. But there's a quote when it comes to guitar playing that you only develop your own voice or your own style on the guitar when you fail to sound like the person that you're trying to imitate. And that's a big thing in music. You know, there's only so many notes on an instrument, and there's been, you know, centuries of music out there. So it's very hard to be original. But if you take those little pieces of inspiration from different musicians and you try to replicate that sound, you eventually end up coming up with your own sort of style. And that definitely applies to photography as well. If you go down this exercise of trying to understand and copy the editing styles of a lot of different photographers, then it all kind of funnels down and it dilutes to a point where you kind of find your own way as a result of that. Now, this video is all about how to find happiness in those results, in those images that we love the look of when we see them. And we might be asking ourselves, well, why is that important? And that's just something that is very personal to you. Maybe it doesn't matter to you. Maybe you don't want to achieve your own style and you're happy to just kind of change depending on whatever format of photography that you're doing, and that is absolutely fine. But for anybody who is looking to do photography for a living, or if you're just trying to make a little bit of money on the side through photography, then having your own dedicated voice is something that is quite important in my opinion. It's what separates you from other photographers. Now, there's a lot of ways that we can separate ourselves from photographers, whether that is through things like shooting at a specific focal length that is unique to us, or whether that is how we compose images or how we tell stories through our images. But I think the actual aesthetic and visual language of a particular image is often the most striking thing. And it's the thing that transcends individual photos. So when we're looking at a particular body of work, especially if you are multidisciplinary like me, who shoots a lot of different subjects and a lot of different genres of photography, then that common thread that goes through all of those images is a very powerful thing when you're trying to find work. Whether you just want to take photos for the coffee shop around the corner, or you want to reach out to a tourism board to do a massive photography project where you're going to be touching on things like coffee shops, like interiors of hotels, like landscapes of the surrounding area, and portraits of people in those locations, you know, street photography. Those types of commissions can be very broad in their application, but if you are being approached or if you're trying to get that kind of work, then you need to have that commonality across all of your images. So trying to filter down a style that feels right to you is the quickest way to gain success and to gain fulfillment from your work. So I hope you found these little tips helpful. Like I said, this is a journey. It's really, really important to put in the work and put in the hours. It's all very well and good going out to take photos, but it's when you get back and it's when you get into Lightroom or Photoshop and you start putting your own fingerprint on those images, that's when they start to come to life, and that's where you start to gain that recognition. So this can take a long time to achieve, and tastes do change as well. My editing style has certainly changed over the years, but I'm kind of getting to a point now where I'm becoming a little bit more settled in my style, and you know, I might break it from time to time just as, you know, a bit of fun to try and learn a bit more. Is I'll, you know, try different types of split toning, or I'll try different tone curves and things like that. But when it comes to my commercial work, I like to think that I've sort of found a style that is pretty universal and it feels right to me. So if you do have any tips yourself on this subject, then leave them down in the comments below so other people can take those tips away with them. As I said, it's really important to see this as an exercise for learning, not as an exercise for copying other photographers, but it's a really, really fun journey. Can be frustrating at times, but it's definitely rewarding in the end. So if you found this video helpful, make sure to give it a thumbs up, hit that subscribe button, and ring the bell so you get notified of when the next video goes live. As always, thank you so much for watching. Go outside, keep taking photos, and I will see you all next week for another video.